So I think Calvin's going to take us through his cap. We've talked about a lot of it already, but he's going to take us through a little more detail his capital budget for 2019.
So we have $335,422 in the capital fund. Currently, we used $83,693 was taken out for the Auburn Powell Road culvert. $50,000 was put back in last year's town meeting. We have $112,467 left over from the operating budget for public works that's going to go in there. And then $46,103 of the Auburn Powell Road funds are going to go back in there, totaling $208,570. That will leave us a balance in the fund of $460,299 in the capital public works fund, and that's unaudited. Public works capital request, $236,500 for a new truck.
Is that a brand new truck?
Yes. Appropriation capital fund of $50,000.
Just a question on that.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm reading my notes right, but it looks to me like last year the price for the truck was quoted as $210,000. And that,
Next week, it'll be $20,000 more than it is this week.
Well, the cost of steel.
Is that an actual quote, or is that an estimate?
That's not, no.
It's an estimate with a 5% increase over the years from the time that we purchased the plow truck back in 2016, I think it was. And then whatever's not spent on the plow truck would go back into the capital fund. So, I mean, we're not going to go out and say, we're going to buy this really exciting plow truck for $236 if we can buy one for $220.
Well, they go up about 2.5% a year. So.
And how difficult is it to get an accurate price?
So I can get that.
What is the truck?
Truck is a Freightliner tandem axle. Well, I'd say we're Freightliner International, but it's a Wheeler and tandem axle truck. They haul about 12 to 14 yards of material.
Just like the three ribbons we have now, the newest ones. Same thing, right, Calvin?
Same truck, yeah, same thing.
And this comes ready with everything it needs to plow?
Yep, that's,
Well, wouldn't we buy it from the dealer? Yeah, but the chassis goes up to a plow builder who custom builds them to your specifications. It's quite a bit to it. It's not like you're going off the lot and just finding a plow truck. And how long does it take for delivery on average right now?
about 6 months.
Yeah. So even if we buy one next year, it probably won't even really help us for next plowing season.
Well, if it's approved in April, shouldn't you be able to get it by November?
We'll see.
It'll get here in the fall.
6 months will be.
It'll be in the fall.
When we get it, it's
Turnpike
ready
just
for plow.
bought 14.
It goes through a process once you purchase it.
Yeah. So the truck's about 120, and then the other hundreds in all the outfitting the truck with side dumps and all the high-tech plowing.
and is it possible that we can have, that you can have, sent this out and that we can have an actual number by the time the budget committee meets in early February?
You're not going to get an actual number. You'll get a budget number. Nobody's going to give you their bottom line until it goes out to bid. They will go out with an RFP, and then everybody brings their best price as a sealed bid, and we open them in a room.
Why don't you put it out as an RFP contingent upon approval at town meeting?
We can do that.
I mean, they don't need to know that it's, whether you're actually buying it or not, for them to give you a price.
Yeah. We could,
Specs from last year.
Just put it right in it.
yep.
So was last year's number, I can't remember, was that a spec out unit that you had priced, or was that a ballpark also?
Just ballpark,
That was
phone
ballpark.
call with the dealership, and what are we doing this year, and what are they looking like? Yeah, they're up about 2 or 3%.
Okay.
Somebody asked me why we couldn't, they said Florida, but obviously Florida doesn't plow so much snow, so, but they said, why can't we just buy a dump truck and put a plow on it? And it's not the same thing. It looks like a dump truck. The plow trucks have different front ends, different springs, different, you got all that weight on one side, so your springs, everything's heavier. It's made specific for plowing. So even though you got a dump truck driving down the road, it kind of looks the same, underneath it's got a whole lot of other stuff that most dump trucks don't have. It's quite a bit different.
I apologize for my amnesia. I know I asked this question last year, but I don't remember the detailed answer. Why buy over lease considering, as you said, it's dispensing corrosive material and just dying of cancer anyways?
I don't remember, we looked into that, and it's not really a lease, they call it a lease, but it's not a lease.
It's called lease
It's
financing.
called lease financing, yeah.
And basically, it's the same thing as taking a bond out. It's just that at the end of the financing, it's just a different way to finance a truck, basically.
It's not like with a car where you, like, a lease payment and you get like way more vehicle than you would get if you had bought it for a payment over that term. It's more of a financing way to, and you still end up owning the truck.
We looked at it with the fire truck this past year, and it actually ended up being more expensive than purchasing a truck.
For business, because
They don't really want to
appreciation.
rust out a truck back either.
we did look into it though, based on your comments. I know Rob did some research on it. It didn't make sense financially.
I called the town of Gray and asked them how they were doing it, and they explained to me it's really no different than financing, it's just a different.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's 6 1/2 dozen the other. It's not gonna.
So just for clarification, by the time the budget committee meets in early February, you may have a different number for us?
Yeah, I can get you an actual, well, it won't be an actual number, it'll be a budget number, which is pretty much.
See how close your estimate is.
Yep.
It's still gonna be, ultimately, the way this, the way this article would be worded, would be, to see what sum of money that the town will pay, for a new plow truck. And it would be on there that the money would be coming from capital reserves, so no raised money, this year for that. And then it's always a up to, so, selectmen recommend up to, let's use this number, 236.5, and maybe budget committee says up to 230, and the town votes kind of on, what's the ceiling that could be used on the plow truck.
Hasn't that been discussion, I don't know if it was about a truck or other things, but as soon as you publicly say that number, then those vendors who are gonna submit a bid, that number could be higher than what they would have submitted a bid for, and now so you already told them, you'll spend up to that much money.
Yeah, but it doesn't typically really impact things because they still have an interest in giving you, it's still competitive out there, so they still have an interest in giving you a good price. But you're right, I mean, ideally we want to have an estimate as close to reality as possible, and so Calvin's gonna go back and get, check his estimate, and see if that's realistic estimate or maybe it's a bit low.
I agree, I always say the same thing, though, but you know what? If you don't ask for the money, everybody around that might be thinking they're watching that. If you don't ask for it, you don't know if you're gonna get it, and it's all public knowledge, that's the problem. I mean, anybody can come and look at it, so.
But at the end of the day,
All towns the same way.
the chances of everybody bidding on the exact same number of, if you put 236.5 in there, someone's gonna wanna earn that business. So
Right.
you have 5 guys, they're not all gonna, and I think that was evident when we got the bond estimates back. They weren't, it was definitely evident that they didn't watch the meeting. They didn't know how much we had to spend, based on some of the bids that were sent back.
Actually, they did know how much we had to spend, but it didn't impact.
It didn't impact the price at all.
No, the competitive nature of it is that they all know they got 5 competitors bidding on the same project, they want to beat the next guy, so.
They still want business at the end of the day.
Is that what happened with the Auburn Pownell culvert? Is that why it came in so
Yep.
much lower?
Yep, let's think about 5
Yeah,
minutes
that's a
on
great
that.
point. That's another prime example of what happened.
So why was our estimation so off? Like, where do we get our estimation numbers
That
from?
was an engineer's estimate based on the specs of the job.
Why do we have to tell a dealer or truck, wherever we get this from, what we have to spend or what the?
We don't tell them.
Well, we don't tell them, but if they happen to do their research and look at our town warrant or watch the tape of our town meeting, they can see.
And they will.
But and that's all public, it has to be public.
Right, okay, I thought we were talking about going out to, doing the RFP or going out to bid prior to the meeting, so we had a more accurate price.
Right, but if we do that, we don't give them that number in an RFP, we don't say,
Okay,
hey.
that's what I was asking,
Yeah.
okay.
But is that the plan, we're gonna ask for an RFP with the pending approval, or are we just
Ultimately-
double checking our estimate numbers? What's our plan before the
Typically, we
beginning
wouldn't
of
send an
February?
RFP out until we have approval from the town to go, buy a truck. So, but I think Calvin can do without a formalized RFP is, just with a, couple of phone calls, say, hey, we're, in more of an informal bid process, hey, this is what we're looking to do, what, ballpark, what are we looking at, for a price, what's going on with pricing and these things.
But why can't we do the RFP first, because then that way there, as soon as we.
Because it's a waste of effort, quite honestly, and it
So
wouldn't,
many months ahead.
yeah.
If we call one person and ask for that, just so we have a number to come back with, and then we put that out to bid, they're not gonna like rebidding that again once they file if there's 4 other people.
Budgets,
They don't wanna
budgets.
keep bidding.
Budgets are estimates, they're not a list of actual future expenditures.
So I'm playing devil's advocate. If Calvin calls me, it seems to me I would make my estimate on the high side, because once it becomes public knowledge that we have up to, and so I would go on the high side, I end up quoting you 240,000. And so now that becomes a number of public, and all along I'm thinking, when I bid this, I'm gonna bid 230. I think that.
I think you're giving them way too much,
so-
I think you're giving them way too much credit in that they pay that close attention
Yeah,
to
we keep our
anything, it
town
just
meeting
doesn't
pretty
work that way.
Well, wait a minute, Beth, you just said, they'll go through the effort and they'll watch our town.
No, I said if they
meeting.
do, that's what they would have to do
Yeah.
if they wanted to, and I think frankly, I've never run into that in anything we sent out to bid where somebody has come back to us and say, well, geez, you guys appropriated this much money, how come you're, beating me down so much? It just doesn't happen, it just doesn't work that way in the real world.
Calvin, what was the highest bid on the road launch? It was pretty high. Rob, do you remember?
It was several $100,000 higher than the lowest bid.
1.3, I think
Yeah,
it was,
they,
1.9.
even with that information out there, they all don't, they still wanna be competitive, it seems.
And they don't quite frankly, they're bidding on stuff from lots of towns, they don't have the resources or the time, and it's not worth it, quite frankly, for them to be scouring every town's minutes and warrants and seeing, well, what did this town appropriate for that? And because ultimately, they say everybody else, to take your case further, everybody else would be doing the same thing, so everybody knows the same stuff, so you still, what am I gonna do to compete to win that bid? Or I'm gonna have to come in lower than that number.
I think it's a valid argument if you're only allowed to bid it through one company, per se, if there is an
Yeah.
actual bid process,
Right,
like, hey, we can only buy from O'Connor, we wanna raise 236,000, so we call up O'Connor, we can only buy from you, well, it's 236,500. But, that's not necessarily the case here, so I think they still wanna sell units at the end of the day.
The driving factor in the RFP process is that they're concerned about what the competitor is going to give for a price. That's what drives the process, is them trying to beat their competitors. So.
And in buying a project, approximately how many vendors might the RFP be sent out to?
Well, it goes to, I typically will send it to about 5 or 6. People that I know are going to bid. If it's I won't send it to a McMack or Peterbilt or trucks that, they don't do plow trucks, they're trucks that spec for it. We know it was going to International, it's going to Freightliner, it's going to Western Star. It's going to go up to about 5 different vendors. That's typically what we get, about 4 or 5 bids.
Calvin, is there, for lack of better words, like a, well, not even lack of better words, when you bid a plow truck to you for, like, let's say this 236,500 number, do you take, say, a base plow truck, middle of the road plow truck? You know, you got the SL model, the SLT model, the G71 model, the Denali model. I mean, is there different scales?
The King Ranch.
It's all based on specs for the.
Right, but what I'm saying is, could you get a, let's say, a basic truck for $230? Is that the basic, or is that, it could be up to, you know, $400,000, for example? Like, it's got all the latest, greatest GPS technology, so Rob can track it from his office and all that stuff.
It's whatever's in our spec. We don't spec anything that's beyond what we.
But based on your specs, is it able to be moved? Are you speccing a middle-of-the-road truck, a basic truck?
Basic.
A basic truck, so that's about as low as you think it would be? Okay.
No leather.
No.
No ventilated seats?
No.
Okay.
Cooling seats.
No.
So you said earlier you wanted to get a Freightliner tandem.
That's what we
How
have.
many-
We have 3 of
How
those
many
now.
Freightliner dealerships are there in the area?
One. But he's competing heavily against International, against Western Star, against, so they're all.
So are we
competition.
going for whichever is the best price, or are we gonna pick up the Freightliner?
We're going for the best price. I mean, there is some level of, there is some merit to the fact that we would like to keep the truck somewhat the same so that we know we can buy the same parts, and I don't want to have stock parts for International and stock parts for a Freightliner, but depends on if it's close. I think that's a judgment call the board makes.
If they're $1,000 difference, we might choose the Freightliner. If it's $10,000 difference, probably not, you know, that's something we'll have to weigh.
And so you don't limit your specs so much that really only the Freightliner can bid on it, and it's custom made for the other companies?
Right, the bid will say that if you can't meet the spec, you have to list why you can't meet it, and does it exceed the spec, or does it meet the spec, but it's a different part or a different spec, but it meets the intent of the.
At the end of the day, your main spec's not gonna be Freightliner, I think is what you're trying to
Right, right, we don't tailor it so that only one person can bid on it.
There was quite a bit of work actually put in that spec way back when we started this whole process. Rob was involved, the road commissioner at that time was involved. It's quite an extensive spec set. And it isn't, you know, I'm one of Ford, I want a GMC conversations. It's weights of axles, engine power, the technology, the plow control configurations. It's very, very technical towards what the truck needs to do the job and the task it is designed to do. You know, the rate of spreading sand and the variability of that and how those controls work. It's those things. It's not AC and radio, and you know, it's a pretty thorough spec actually. That I assume he's still using the same one that was built a bunch of years ago, and possibly there's things to be updated in it.
I beefed up the front end from 18,000 to 20,000, because that's where it should be for a plow truck. And, but that's, yeah, they're a part of that. Most of the spec for that truck, a lot of, I should say, over half of it is in the HP Fairfield, or whoever gets the bid for the
outfitter.
For the outfitter gets. There's a lot to do with that. That costs about as much as the truck. So.
And I think, Rich, you meant the question to the basic truck. I'd say the chassis is pretty basic. There are some things that we ask for. I mean, yeah, we could go with a single axle truck and save some money, but it's not really going to do the job for us. So we do ask for, you know, pre-wetting and tanks on the trucks, and we get side dump bodies and that are, you know, better for the application of the salt and stuff. And then we have ground speed control on there. So, but those are cost saving measures. So we're not spending, you know, $200,000 on salt. We're only spending $100,000. So that's not. I wouldn't say that that's basic. I mean, you could go with the old dump truck and sander in the back and probably save a little bit of money. But where these trucks are mainly used for plowing and snow control, that's the way to go. But, you know, Boothbay Harbor buys their front trucks lock in, and they buy stainless steel bodies and add another $50 grand to that. But that's their town's preference. So there is quite a bit of variability. So I would say 4x4, but it's what, 12x12?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So, yeah. So there are some options. So this is fairly basic, but it has the technology that we need to do the job properly.
Probably an over-the-highway truck could be different than a
Yep.
roundabout.
Yeah.
You have a small.
And in all honesty, there's a reason why Freightliner usually gets the bids, and it's because they build a chassis for that, that's the market that they compete in. Western Star and International do try to compete, but more often than not, especially in the Northeast, it's Freightliner that comes in low.
They've won every bid, so.
If I remember right, you did also buy software for the mechanic or something like that, that
Yep.
works with Freightliner, that
Yep.
the town already owns.
Yeah.
And for the first time in Public Works history, we have a mechanic that actually knows how to use this.
Well, that's good. You didn't have to talk about that.
So that's, plow truck 236.5, I can get a firm number on that, or a firmer number on that. I mean, it did talk to me, basically, we're going up to 2.5% a year, so.
Yeah, just do a double check on it and see, you know,
Yeah.
it can't hurt.
Check with HP Fairfield too.
Yeah, well, we were getting the trucks, the first two trucks we got, we had two different, we bought the truck and then we had the truck outfitted. I didn't want to do I didn't want to have two different people involved, so I required in the last bid that whoever sold us the truck would have the truck outfitted. And then if there's a problem, I don't get this, I don't care whose fault it is, you sold me the truck, you get it fixed, I don't care if it's HP's fault or your fault. So that's the way I do it, is I want everything in one, I want somebody at the end of the day responsible for the whole truck.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Except the guy, the truck dealer is gonna get 10% on that, or 20%.
Well, I know, usually when they submit their bids, they submit the outfitter's numbers. When they get this bid, they send the truck out to the outfitter, they get their number back, and they submit them together. But I didn't want to pay for them separately, or I didn't want to hire HP Fairfield separately from the truck. I wanted it all in one shop, but so I know they didn't mark their numbers up, because I already had their numbers, so. But I just made them supply the truck with all of the truck outfitted.
So the number was 210 last year? So it was it?
Right around there, yeah.
That was just the budget number last year too. That-
We actually purchased a truck for, I think it was 205,000.
That was after trade-in.
No, that was before trade-in, and then after trade-in, we paid about 194,000. We won't have anything to trade in this year.
Sure. So, I mean,
Scrap
210, I
metal's
mean,
worth something.
Cash for
The truck that has no tires in the back, that's gonna go for scrap at least, right?
We'd have to pay them.
236.5, so 12.5% increase over 210, so.
Well, I'll get you a number for that. So we have, so you're looking at 236.5 for the truck. You have Public Works Facility Bond, the payments, the outstanding debt for the Public Works Facility Bond, $91,120. Public Works Equipment Bond, $141,524. Public Works 2016 road bond of $168,991. Public Works 2018 bond of $251,860. Total of $653,495, which is a total of all combined of $939 to $995. And you're looking at taking $236,500 out of the capital and raising $703,495.
How many more years do we have left on the facility?
Facility bond.
I thought you had it listed somewhere, I thought I saw it earlier,
Yeah,
but now I can't find it.
It was in the budget overview with the debt.
More than 5?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
if
the
facility
building
was
one
12
is
to
15 years, so this is number 5 out of 15. The equipment bond is number 5 out of 10. The road bond is 3 out of 7, and then, of course, the new road bond is 1 out of 10.
So-
3 out of 7 and 1 out of 10.
Yeah. It's in the budget overview, Jill, so if you look in there, it outlines the whole debt.
So shortly here, we're gonna be paying on trucks that are no longer in service. More or less, probably.
Yeah. Everybody looking at it?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the 5 older trucks that we purchased, when we started Public Works. So there were the 2 new ones, and then there were the 5 older ones.
Well, that bond included all of it, though.
Yeah.
It was just trucks, it was
And the
great.
loader and the, yeah, all the other stuff.
Originally, when that was put together, was some of the new people, the committee recommended we buy trucks, I think Johnson was on that, I don't know who else here was on it, but the committee recommended buying trucks at a certain age and then backing up so many years, so they weren't all due at the same time. And at that time, with the road commission we had, when we sent them out to start looking, they came back to us and said, not John, but the road commissioner and one of the mechanics came back to us and said, everything out there that we see that's in this time frame that we recommended is worse than what we have an opportunity to buy that's already been used, even though some of that stuff was over. So after doing some research, looking them over and checking them out, that's what they decided to do. We wanted to stagger them, but the cost of the money was a lot lower. Because this process to get from 0 to where this town is now, town garage is now, was a 3-year process of committees doing a lot of research, trying to figure out what was the best way, was it gonna be feasible, did the town wanna do all that stuff? So by the time we got to that in the 3-year process, some of the trucks we were getting prices on, they weren't there no more. It's like anything else, especially if it's a plow truck, you get beat up with salt and snow. So. And we knew going in, we was gonna end up with those old trucks that we had to try to rotate them quicker than most towns normally would.
Look, it is what it is at this point in time, it's kind of water under the bridge.
It is, that's right, but I know.
But I do think financing equipment for 10 years, that's already 10 years old, seems a little,
Yeah,
not a good way to go.
no,
I probably should have done a couple different separate.
Well, like I said, the excavator was new, the trailer.
Yeah.
Do the building a little longer, 20 years instead of 15, that was allowed, and then, you know, some of that, I don't want to go over
But
7.
you could rebond some of that stuff, right, like the building, can you rebond that and extend the bond if we wanted to keep costs down, or? I know you end up paying more in
I think you could
interest.
probably
but
entertain that, I don't know what we're paying on for interest now, but being that they're going up.
sometimes those rates come down, so it's in your best.
and that's actually what
Best
happened
interest to
from the
rebond.
time we researched it, when it came time to actually borrow the money for that, we actually got a better interest rate on both those loans. Actually, we got a better interest rate, and I think originally, the building was for 20 years, and we ended up got a better interest rate and backed it down to 15.
Well, one of them is about 3.5%, I think the other one is just a touch over 4%. Might do a little better than that.
We probably should have looked at that 2 years ago too.
Right.
We missed the boat.
So what's the thinking in not using more of the capital works balance?
Rainy day.
The capital reserves balance? I don't know, but like I said, this is the first time we're seeing the proposal too, so we haven't had that conversation. So Calvin, what is your thinking on not using more? I will, other than to say, it's typically not good practice to spend your reserves to 0 every year, or even close to it. I think, I mentioned that we have 2 trucks that are in that 20-year range, so I think ideally we would get one this year and out of capital reserves, and another one next year, again out of capital reserves. And then that would essentially have turned over our fleet, and it would be a few years before we'd need to buy another truck.
What was that next one list?
Another big plow truck. Yeah, we're not doing 10 years, Calvin.
I know, I didn't think
Tell you
I was
that
gonna
right
say,
now.
I was
We're not
gonna-
doing a 10-year rotation.
I said, actually, they'll only give about 3 years, but.
No.
You like your job.
460.
So
So
in
you're talking about-
2018, we pretty much increased our revenue almost enough to buy this truck. We're $28,000 short.
Yeah, well, we put in 172,000 is what we put in.
No, we put in 208,570.
Yeah, that's kind of that's really, that 46 is really more of a paper shuffle than anything. That 83,693 was in, we show it as an appropriation, you know, to give us permission to spend up to that much out of capital reserves, but we didn't spend we didn't spend it, so that 46,000 is essentially putting money back that was already there. It's not new
Right, I guess what
money.
I'm saying though is the town approved spending it. So in the sense, you could say that it didn't get spent, or you could say now it's being reshuffled to buy a plow truck. You can reword it however you wanna reword it. But what we were anticipating going down last year, we didn't.
Yeah.
So we are now $208,570 richer, more, whatever word you wanna use, in that account than we thought we were going to be a year ago.
Yeah, you could put it that way, yeah. But that, like I said earlier, that's, you know, there's lots of ways to get money into capital reserve accounts. In a town that, for instance, doesn't have any of these, parameters where operational balances get rolled into reserve accounts, they'll have an article on their warrant asking for $200,000 to be put into reserves. So it's a bit of a, you know, like many roads lead to the same place kind of a thing, you know. So yeah, you're right. In terms, on paper, it's over $208,000 being added. In new money though, it's about $160,000, because the 46 was already there. But yeah, so that's the balance. And so if we spent, you know, 236, that's gonna leave us, what, that would leave the beginning year balance, or what was that, 224-ish? And then I think from what I'm hearing, both the budget committee and the selectmen are of the mindset that perhaps we want to challenge the operational budget in Public Works to not come back with a 10% overage. So I would anticipate less operating money overage for Public Works going in next year. Yeah.
You actually mean under, it's not overage, it's an underspend.
Sorry, yeah, over budgeted is what I meant, yeah, so. So if we, so if we end the year at 224, and then let's say if we, you know, get, I think we're gonna ask for another 50,000 straight contribution, and then if, let's say the over budget is cut in half and it's like 50,000, so we put another 100,000 in, we'd have a balance of about 324, and if we were looking to buy another truck out of that, we're bringing that pretty far down. You know, you're well under $100,000 at that point.
When's your next truck request?
I think we're looking at one this year and one next year. Because that's the two trucks that are about 20 years old.
Is the budget you presented last year for kind of, you presented at the town hall meeting, the capital
Yeah,
budget?
I just don't have all of the information I need to do that, but I will have an updated version of that for you before you actually start your budget meetings. Yep.
So I just want to say real quick, having been in Calvin's shoes in a similar position in a different town, just remember that what we're approving is up to an amount, and he's not allowed to come in on it. So there's always going to be some amount. You know, so yeah, maybe 10% is too much, but he does have to make sure he doesn't handicap his crew and his department, and that he can get through a winter and get through a year with some unforeseen circumstances. And fortunately, we haven't had those. Well, we did have the trucks, but we made it up in labor. That may not be possible every year, so I just want to caution again. I mean, yes, and it's in a way it's good, but we're also kind of penalizing him and saying, well, we're not going to give you what you had because you didn't spend it. But I don't want to encourage him to go be like the Navy and just burn fuel to keep their budget high.
Did you get your flagpole this year?
No. Didn't get the flagpole.
I forgot about the flagpole.
Didn't pave his parking lot.
It's not in there.
Didn't get the time.
So, I mean, to that end, I mean, I think it's gonna be looked at, the reserve money could be used if there's overages, right?
Yeah.
Which right now it can't be.
Right, it can't be now, right?
So again, I think, like I say, we have a committee formed to kind of look at a new capital improvement policy and process that might call for some changes in how the money is allocated in different accounts.
Is that a town ordinance?
No.
What is it?
Well, the piece that, it's not ordinance, but it's passed at town meeting that, operational overages for fire department and public works roll into those departments' capital reserve accounts. So to not do that anymore would require a town vote, at town meeting, to stop that practice, so.
That's something that could get proposed this year.
Again, yeah, I think the board hasn't discussed it yet, it's on the table for us to discuss, kind of in conjunction with what the capital improvement policy committee comes back with. I haven't seen any of their work to date, I have no idea what they're coming back with for a recommendation. But those are the types of discussions that are on the tables to better manage our capital money, and not just to provide like current year flexibility in how monies can be allocated, but to make sure that we are responsibly planning out years for expected capital expenses. So, because the flip side, like let's say for the sake of argument, if we don't send operational overages into capital reserves, then that will increase the amount of money that we are asking for in capital reserves in any given year in a capital reserves article. So, and quite honestly, that's a little risky because this town has not always been, psyched about putting money in capital reserve accounts. I mean, there have been years where it said, nope, zero. And, and we deal with that, but it is risky. And there are people that think that, that it's an incentive for department managers of fire and public works to be as tight with their budget as they can during the year and save as much as they can, because they see it as an incentive to have that money go to their dedicated capital reserve accounts to be spent on things dedicated for their department. So there's reasonable arguments both ways, but that's the discussion we'll have once we hear back from the capital improvement committee.
Currently, if any department overspends their budget, where does that money come from?
So if you overspend, and we'll actually see this with one of the departments this year, if you overspend at the bottom line, then what has to happen is we actually have to have an article on the warrant in 2019 to basically ask permission from the town to take that overages out of undesignated funds to make that account square. So, and I think we're gonna see that in one, did you hold up two fingers? Yeah, two accounts this year. Not big amounts, not huge amounts by any means, but we are gonna see a couple this year.
What town says no?
Can't say no.
Well, I read something really scary the other day. Like, actually, I don't even know if I want to say it out loud. In some way, there have been cases where if an account is overspent and it's kind of determined that people weren't really watching it very closely, somebody can file suit, and the selectmen can be held personally liable from their assets for the overage.
I probably solved.
It never happens. I read that and the other day, and I was like, holy crap. But,
All the more reason.
Thanks for sharing.
there has to be like malfeasance involved.
It would have to be a criminal.
Yeah.
negligence.
So that.
So just one thing I'll call out to the budget committee, for the new members, you'll make two separate recommendations here. You'll make a recommendation on the truck, and then it's a separate recommendation on the capital fund request. The 50,000, if that's what we come, whatever it is that we haven't had our discussions about it yet.
Okay.
Is that it?
Do we want to discuss the bond, proposed roads to be finished?
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you have that last slide there?
Of course.
So the roads to be finished, I took the one one road off here that,
Quaker Ridge.
Quaker Ridge off, that we put on, that we're going to anticipate getting done with the money from this year's bond. So the roads to be finished with the Brown Road from Danielle Drive to the Freeport town line. Bowie Hill Road, starting 3,350 feet in from Stackpole Road to Cops Pit. Grant Road, from Royalsboro Road to the Freeport town line. Apple Ridge from Route 9 to its end. Brickyard Hill Road from Pinkham Brook Road to the gravel. Meadow Road from Swamp Road to Pinkham Brook Road.
Should that say from Quaker to Pinkham Brook Road?
Where am I? Which road?
On Meadow Road.
Swamp Road to Swamp Road to Pinkham Brook Road.
That's only like the far end section.
Meadow, let me think about this. Pinkham, but that should say Quaker Meeting House Road.
That's
Sorry.
right, yeah.
Which end?
Quaker Meeting to Swamp.
So does that not include the small portion? You're planning to do
Well, it
the
depends on,
Well, that's the whole road.
Or is
That was just
so
the,
you're thinking
Pinkham Brook to
Quaker to Pinkham Brook, the whole deal, right?
the whole thing from Swamp Road or Soper Road, whichever the two.
So the wild card on this one is, I don't know,
Oh, actually,
It's actually gonna go from.
Actually, it goes all the way
through
through
125.
Actually, it's gonna go right from 125. But I think we left that piece, because we were
We
trying to
left the
determine what
short piece because we were gonna
DOT
wait for the state to get done.
isn't that the Swamp to Pinkham piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it should
Because-
say Quaker Meeting House to Swamp.
Right, because we don't know yet, supposedly DOT is going to rebuild that intersection in the Pinkham Brook end of Meadow, and 125, and like change the approach angle, and they're actually gonna shift 125 to make that a more gentle curve as you're going around that house that is like right on the road on the inside of the turn. That's a DOT project, and it's supposed to be a 2019 project, but I just asked Calvin during the break if he's heard from DOT, and we haven't heard anything definitive yet.
But I think those numbers included the entire length. I'll have to I'll double check it, but I think.
Yeah, because it's certainly not 2.1 miles from Swamp to Pinkham.
I think I was going to Pinkham Brook Road and all the way through, so I.
Let's just verify that
Pretty
distance,
sure.
okay, just to make sure our estimate is in line.
Yep.
And to be clear, these are roads to be rebuilt?
Yes. And so Meadow Road, and then Plymouth Mill Road from Swamp Road to Old Brunswick Road. Total of 5.70 miles. Cost of $2,056,440.94. Cost per mile $355,785 per mile.
So before you guys actually meet to discuss this, then I'll provide you with, breakdowns of tax impact of the bond and what the out schedule is, like we looked at last year, so you'll have that information when you're talking about what you want to recommend or not recommend.
So this would theoretically be over a 10-year bond as well, like last year's was
Yeah,
theoretically?
so you could ballpark it, the 10-year bond we did, that this is the first year payment, it's a little over $250,000 payment. This would be, again, about a $2 million bond. Interest rates aren't that different than they were, last year, so, back of the napkin, it's another $250,000 a year for 10 years, if we did it. If we did the whole $2 million.
Originally, we proposed a $4 million bond
That's right, and it was amended
that
to 2
the
on
town
4.
turned down. So, did we get, I don't recall getting any inclination that they would approve splitting it over a 2-year period. Are we just hoping and asking?
I actually
Depends what Alice
spoke
wants.
to, I spoke to several people.
Has anyone spoken to her then?
Yeah, I spoke to several people that were a little bit confused by last year's bond and didn't realize that, it would have been split over 2 years, the initial 2 years anyway. And then for 8 years, you're paying for both, right? So I think, I'll only speak for myself. My point of view has been that, we identified the work that needs to be done. And we're coming up, this is what it would cost to do it, and do you wanna do it? And that's what I feel the responsibility of the board is to bring these questions to, the town and, see if that's what the town wants to do. And we may or may not recommend that, yeah, we think we should do it, or no, we actually, this is what it would cost, but we think we should wait a year, and like I said, we haven't had that conversation yet.
Well, I'm wondering too if there'd be any benefit to bring it to the town ahead of town meeting.
What do you mean by ahead of town meeting?
Literally that, not
To
just.
vote on?
Huh?
To vote on?
No, to have a discussion. As you said, there were people last year that were confused. Maybe get a better feel from people so that if there is the opinion that one person speaks louder than others, just to get a better feel of exactly. It seemed like it was more of just an argument last year than an educated discussion. It would be nice to try and figure out a way to make it be more of an educated discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we can always do a better job. I think, last year I went through a PowerPoint presentation to try to explain it to everybody. I think now that we kind of have the bones of that, we could conceivably get that up on the website, well before a town meeting, that people could go look and read through and see, what we were talking about. And I've thought about that for a lot of things where we're gonna ask, because we're gonna ask the town some big questions in the next year or two, on everything related to possibly, let's say, for instance, changing our fiscal year from a calendar year to a more fiscal year that aligns with the state. We may, that's something that conceivably the board might come and ask the town about. Or, do we move to a town manager or form of government versus what we have now? Those are some big questions that it's gonna be important to get a lot of information out ahead of time, and not just like show up at town meeting and all of a sudden have, that debate.
Yeah.
So,
Have 15 people vote on it.
right.
It doesn't matter if we get out ahead of time on public hearings and everything, it's still gonna happen at town meeting.
There'll still be 137
That's
people.
no discussion.
Yeah.
We might as well have this discussion at town meeting and it will still happen.
No, but your point's well taken, though. I mean, I'm a firm believer, and everyone in town offices, been sick of hearing me harp on it for the last couple of years, like, we've gotta do a better job in communication and getting information out earlier and making sure everything's accurate on the website and stuff.
I mean, I agree, it's a two-way street. You have to read, you have to listen, you gotta do that sort of thing too.
People don't even look at the tax bills when they get them, they come down and ask the girls where all the money's going, they point to the percentages right there on the tax bill. There it is. Oh, I didn't see that. That happens a lot. You gotta make the effort to read.
So, I mean, we could, like on the bond thing, to get us coming back into the topic, we could put it out there and say, yeah, okay, this is the information, and the selectmen recommend yes, and the budget committee could say, no, we recommend no, or we recommend half that, or we recommend we just do Meadow Road, or we, whatever you do, and then that's what we discuss on town floor.
So, why is it estimated 19,000 more per mile than this year?
That's a budget number. I mean, we don't know what the bid's gonna come in at, same as.
Asphalt.
Asphalt is higher this year than it was last year.
Labor's definitely
Labor's definitely
higher.
higher.
These are budget numbers, and when the bids come in, they could be, they could be a couple $100,000 less, we don't know until.
It'll show you the labor's higher, because every town's stealing the guy from one town to the next town, sometimes they rotate them every 3 weeks.
Well, the minimum wage has gone up $2 an hour just from when we had the
And it'll go up
discussion
another
last
dollar
year.
next year.
So,
Calvin, isn't the scope on this one a little bit more extensive on some of these roads with some more material being added than some of the others that have just been the full grind and the pavement over the top with injection? Looks like you're adding a lot more material to some of these.
Well, I think, yeah, I've got a couple of them, I don't have the breakdown.
We didn't have any 6-inch reclaim depths last year, you're right, there is more.
There's more scope to these roads than the roads that are already completed.
No, these roads are in, the Meadow Road is,
Had to be pretty rough on Old Brunswick Road, I would think.
yeah. We had more box cutting on Old Brunswick, I don't see any here. But, you know, I mean, you know, they definitely have to be, Meadow Road and, what's the other one, Bowie Hill Road need to be raised up to get out of the water table. We're already at the water table, so we can't ditch our way out of it, so we gotta, we can't bring the ground to run it down, so we gotta bring it up.
Do we have a total outstanding, debt number on each of the bonds?
You can do the total that we actually owe?
Yeah.
Yes. Let me see if I can do that fast. I don't know if I can.
That was part of, if you look back through your town warrants, part of whenever there's a bond question, part of the bond question always has to include like total town current obligations and, you know, what you're on the hook for. The piece we didn't provide last year, Ruth, that I want to make sure we call out this year is, you know, there are guidelines for an appropriate amount or you know, for debt for a town to handle based upon its size. So we should call out, you know, where are we in relation to that? You know, like, are we like maxed out our credit card, or we got like half our limit left? You know,
Like, I will email that out with the rest. I
Well-
can't access it because it's
Essential.
yeah, similar. Yeah.
Similar towns.
Well, I believe, Ruth, aren't there like state guidelines or something
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah. We're required to not go over a certain amount. We're actually not really close to our limit.
Is that based on towns like us that don't have other properties?
It's based off of your valuation.
We should have that.
So it's a certain percent of your valuation is what you can borrow. Off the top of my head, I think it's 5%, but I'd have to actually look.
The other thing that would be helpful, like the town meeting was asked for, I think last year, was an overview of the budget up front. Like even this spreadsheet, I think would do. You know, what's the total impact up front?
Yeah, we can add that to the, I thought I had a couple slides.
Like a handout.
Oh, it's a handout, yeah, yep.
I think last year you tried to do it, but the AD stuff was on the fritz or whatever.
Making note of that right now.
Seemed to be a lot of discussion last year about public works in general, around whether or not it's actually more cost effective for the town to do it ourselves or what we did before. Has that been looked into? Is there a plan to have that looked into?
It hasn't been looked into in terms of doing an actual, you know, feasibility study on it. We can, Ruth has put together some numbers, based on requests from Lee that kind of looks at what, you know,
I
last
had
10 years.
hoped to have it for you guys tonight. I had done a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, very similar to this, looking over the past 10 years, 2009 up to today, and the costs associated with the stuff. There were some tweaks that the board had wanted me to do on the presentation, and with my audit and stuff, I just haven't had the chance. I will email that to you as soon as I have the time. And then going forward, if the town wanted to, I mean, there are studies that you could do to see if it was worthwhile.
You could actually, I'm glad that question was asked, because I just happen to have a couple of those numbers. This ain't right down to a penny, but it's pretty close. I brought last year's book, and our last year of paying a contractor, I think it was somewhere around $704,000.
It was, I think it was 702,500.
Yeah, that was just to plow the roads.
Yep.
So we took, and the average, and this is similar to what Ruth had that she gave us the other day, because when she brought that up, my numbers were pretty close. And the average over the course of that 5-year contract was about a 5% increase. So if you added that up, 5% each year, is somewhere around 900,000, a little less or a little more, somewhere around 900,000, just to plow the roads. Our whole budget is just under $1.3 million.
Our whole budget for public works is 2.2 million.
He's not
1.2
talking capital.
million.
paving
No,
and
I'm not
stuff
talking
like that.
capital, I'm talking, the capital would be no matter who you had. If you had an outside contractor plowing, you still have capital.
Cause I did something similar too, got different numbers than you.
I mean, I think you have to factor, well, you do gotta factor in, I mean, not paving, but the equipment bonds, I mean, that goes to the cost, so that's part of the budget, even if it's not factored in operating. The new truck's another 230 some odd thousand.
My presentation
So-
factors in the capital cost.
Yeah,
Okay,
hers-
so, but those numbers,
Hers does, and her numbers and mine, when she did that, I had to chuckle to myself, because I had done it this way, without being as specific as she was in the appraisal.
So I would say this about that, because, I'll say this about that. We are not gonna do a feasibility study on public works as part of this budget process, okay? If we wanna form a committee, if somebody wants to ask the selectmen to form a committee, to look at that, we'd be happy to have that discussion. But our job is to pass a 2019 budget, and that's what we're gonna be focused on. I think there's a lot of good questions that could be asked, like, what about this, what about that? I will say that if we're going to do something like that, we need to have a true finance professional involved, because to this point, we have not had that in any of either the original analysis or subsequent analysis after that. So, because it's a very complicated thing. How do you measure, productivity? You can't just take, 10 years ago we spent this and now we spend this and divide it by the number of miles of road we have, because that doesn't say anything about what's being done to those miles of road and what condition they're in or anything like that. So, I have no issue with taking a really good look at it. But it's not gonna be free. We're gonna have to hire a professional to do it. And
it's not part of
and
this
it's not
process.
part of this
Right.
process, and we'll try to not have it be part of the town meeting discussion either, because, certainly people can express their feelings about it, and their desire to have things looked at, but, we're not gonna debate on town floor whether we should have bonded this or done that other thing, because at the end of the day, what was decided in the past and what happened in the past is irrelevant, okay? The only thing that matters now is, if we wanted to do something different in a way differently than we do it now, what would that cost in the future? Because that's the comparison. It's like, this is what we're spending now. We can do things differently in the future. What does that look like? It doesn't matter at all what the past analysis was.
Would it be appropriate for the budget committee to have a discussion, and if the committee so choose to make a recommendation, say, you're already talking next year a plow truck's gonna be due, and I'm guessing that plow truck has a plow route, to put that one route out to bid? Could that be part of the budget process for next year? Would that be an appropriate recommendation, rather than review the entire
I think it would be
Public Works Department?
The role of the budget committee is to make monetary recommendations on budget articles. But I think the board would certainly be open to, feedback from the budget committee about questions you're curious about, things you'd like to look into, and then we can discuss, how to explore that. But it wouldn't be something that would go on, for instance, town warrant or to be voted on.
This one last question. What if the budget committee did want a feasibility study? Would they present that in the budget? Say,
No.
we wanna add $20,000 for a feasibility study for public works
The
and shit?
admin line.
Yeah, you could conceivably do that, because that's a financial recommendation.
Yeah, because if that's the content, that's the consent, it comes down to do it, or you're gonna have to wait until the next year, because you're never really.
I would encourage you to read the stuff that Ruth has put together first, and look at that, and look at whatever else you want to look at, and then come to your own conclusion on whether you think that it would be worth it to go down that road.
I think that's more what I'm curious, is if we can just give the town a little bit of encouragement or confidence that we are okay. Like, you know, it seems like there's big amounts here and big amounts there, but in the overall scheme of things, we are okay.
Right.
I don't think they have that reassurance.
I think that's a very good point. I think especially to use the word confidence when it comes to public works, I think is right on. I think there's always room for improvement, but I think the level of performance and the value we get from public works is well beyond the confidence that a significant portion of the town has in public works.
It just comes up every year.
Yep. Yeah, and you know, part of it is because it's new and it's unknown and it's, you know, there've been some bumps in the road and, you know, it's just part of it is the way people talk in small towns too, you know.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of perception that, oh, we're gonna save money, and I don't, I remember the community work, it was like, we're gonna control our destiny, and at that time, I think the thought was, we were gonna make the investments in the roads that you have made the last couple of years. And that is going to cost you money, whether you're doing it with a contractor or whether you're supporting it with your own forces. So I guess, you know, the real bigger question is doing it with our forces cost effective? And I think there's been some attempts at quantifying that as well. But the last few years of it being a contracted thing, there was very little being done on road maintenance, and that's why I think we're really getting hit right now. Because it was absorbing the plow increase and absorb the plow increase, and less on top coats and ditching and cross culverts, and I think we're paying for it now.
I think, Joe, I think
You
we
can
can
get a lot
increase
of miles of road resurfaced for the price of a plow truck.
So I say that
I
again.
think that's what, so I think, and I know it's different from what we're here to do, but I think it's a responsibility to the taxpayers of the town to at least look at it. I think there's a lot of concern, and I think if it's costing more, I think the town needs to be okay with saying it was a mistake, if it was a mistake, and go back. You know, I don't know that towns or governments tend to do that, so.
Well, I think you just asked us, what's the cost for road, like, compared to the plow truck? Is that what you just?
No, I just said you could get a lot of resurfacing done for the cost of a plow truck. I mean, we're talking 300 and some odd thousand for resurfacing, and a plow truck is 230.
Right, but that plow truck's gonna be in your contractor's bid cost. Somebody's gonna be replacing that truck, whether it's
Right, but it's
our
gonna be
truck or
split
the
amongst
contractor's truck.
a lot of other towns. It's not gonna be just us paying for it every 3 years.
I say, you know, look at the numbers that Ruth's gonna send you. And these are not, you know, these are audited numbers, like by a third party, so it's not like these are just, you know, numbers anybody here or town office, you know, put together. These are audited numbers by the, who audits them?
RKO,
Yeah, so the
our
county.
auditors?
Yeah, so,
With the exception of 2018.
Yes.
yeah, except for the current year, because the current year is in process of being audited, but all the historical stuff is audited numbers.
So Ruth, you're doing the past 10 years?
Yeah, 2009 till 2018, that's 10 years. How
So
far did you
in
go
that
back?
PowerPoint you had.
No, I guess what I was thinking was the comment being made that not a lot of actual, I wanna make sure I use the right word, new road work versus maintenance? What's the proper terminology?
For which?
Calvin, for when we're actually doing the FDR and adding the
Reconstruction.
reconstruction. Okay, so the chatter right now is there wasn't a lot of reconstruction done prior to 2013.
So when you see the spreadsheet, you'll see that the road bonds are not really included in the spreadsheet. And the reason that they're not really included is because that is expenses that we would have to have incurred one way or the other in order
Right,
to
that's what
rebuild
I was
roads.
curious, that's what I
Yes.
was gonna comment on, is
And
to
you'll
try and
see-
separate that out.
You know, I will certainly explain in my slides where my thought process was in the figuring. But the plow contract was paid over a 7-month period. And so what I did is I took the base expenses of the public works over the 7-month period, used that, plus whatever winter expenses are specifically, you know, like the salt and the sand, that kind of stuff. And that is what I consider the winter portion. I had originally included 100% of the equipment and the building bonds, and the board had suggested that I use the 7-month figure out of those. You probably could argue it either way.
Ruth, without the presentation in front of them, I don't know
Yeah.
if this is easy to follow. Can you
Yeah.
just put that in the
Yeah, we can just
paragraph?
wait for it.
Yeah.
I was
With
just
the
curious,
presentation?
to the town to say, you know, to the town to point out that the budget is greater the past 3 years because of the road reconstruction we've done, you know, something like that is what I'm curious to know, is how much of the added expense is road reconstruction and how much of the added expense is the fact that we have our own public works.
I hope to answer that question, at least on the surface for you guys.
Motion to adjourn?
I second.
Hold on, wait. You can't second this.
I had some budget committee with
All right. Motion to adjourn the selectmen's meeting, all selectmen in favor of adjournment? Okay. Selectmen